Next thing I want to talk about this week is, we see the conflict here with Syria and, the calls for our going in, stepping in and, assisting the Syrian people. It's no small issue when a president, is gassing his citizens, women and children. They're not militants, they're not soldiers. We have part of the Geneva Convention that chemical weapons wouldn't be used and deployed in that manner. Weapons of mass destruction, it's a weapon of mass destruction because you're able to kill multitudes simultaneously. And so that is a violation of, those agreements. And I think that for the United States to stand by and not do anything, that's not an option. But I do think that, from NATO and the UN's perspectives, they have to play a bigger role or a greater role in stepping in and, assisting the people in Syria. We can't stand by and not do anything, but the United States cannot be drawn into every conflict, every issue that arises. What is going on in Syria currently, it's a civil war. As this country had its civil war, Syria, they have been fighting forever. A lot of the countries in the Middle East, it seems like the fighting never stops. But I think that for the United States to not get any assistance or support from the United Nations or from NATO, that is not acceptable. What is their purpose if they are not going to step in and either take diplomatic or military actions or support, should I say, military actions to ensure that, a travesty such as gassing, population in a nation, that doesn't take place. We are still in Afghanistan. We've basically withdrawn from Iraq, but we are still in the withdrawal phase, and still have boots on the ground in Afghanistan. Can't afford to go back into fighting two wars simultaneously. President Obama has said that, it would be a minimum effort that would be applied to assisting the people of Syria. Minimal effort is a vague statement in my opinion, and I think that the American people, to ask for more specifics, they're right to do so. So what President Obama was implying, that something as small as a pinprick for the United States would be hugely impactful. Overall, I think there's a lot of talk back and forth, and the bottom line is we need clear specifics. If you're saying it's going to be hugely impactful, then how long is the bombing campaign, if we do an airstrike, how long is that going to go? How much is that going to cost? Are we going only after military targets and so forth, so on? As I've indicated before, I spent 24 years in the military, and I support our doing everything that we need to do so that this doesn't come to our doorsteps. I personally feel that for someone to turn chemical weapons on their own flesh and blood, their own children, if they would do that to their children, only imagine then what they would do to us or to someone who they consider as their enemy. So the fact is, President al-Assad, that his whole attitude in doing what he has done and continuing to deny it, ultimately I do think he intends to take that capability, using those weapons of mass destruction, and then once we see those weapons deployed here within the United States, it's going to be too late. So if we can stop him in Syria, then that's what we need to do. We can't always just look at it from a monetary perspective. Sometimes there's a little bit more that needs to be considered than just how much is it going to cost. But I'm not contradicting myself. My point is simple, that we just need to think before we jump into this situation, but it may be a situation that we can't avoid doing nothing. Doing nothing means that we send the wrong signal, and eventually the Arab nations in general are going to look at that as that they have found a way to get around worrying about the reprisals and so forth from the U.S. or the U.S. and its allies, which should again be NATO and the United Nations. Those agencies have huge powers that they can wield and do things to handle this situation in various manners. We are hearing some positive development over Syria disarming themselves of those weapons of mass destruction, and so if that is something that will come out of this, then that would be a win-win in my opinion. I just again do not want to see the United States drawn into a third war in another country. That would be 3 wars in less than 15 years, and we went into Iraq at the end of 2002, going into 2003, and so we're just 11 years into the Iraq war, and so less than 15 years, basically that's like a war every 5 years, and this country cannot afford to take that kind of responsibility from a financial perspective, especially due to the fact that we have what is closely reaching a $20 trillion deficit, or debt that we're currently undergoing. Beyond that, the last thing I want to talk about is George Zimmerman incident with Shelley Zimmerman. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt and not rush to judgment, but as I said also in the first episode of the Phantom show, was that I felt that George Zimmerman overreacted. He was a coward. He took things way further than they needed to go, and possibly provoked that situation overall. Now we see that here yesterday, that was on September 10th, 2013. Today is September 11th. That he had pulled a weapon or exposed a weapon, threatening his wife or soon to be ex-wife, and threatening her father. And so I think that Mrs. Zimmerman knows a lot more about what happened that night in question with Trayvon Martin. I was looking at some of the bloggers in the comments was, so now is Shelley Zimmerman, is she the thug? So we have to ask ourselves, what is going on with Mrs. Zimmerman? I think that he shows signs of instability, and that he may ultimately do something that he's already taken a young kid's life, but I think that he's gonna do something a lot worse. So I just pray. I'm not trying to predict anything negative or wishful thinking that he does something that we see the truth come out, but I think in the end the truth will be exposed, and I just pray that Mrs. Zimmerman, that she does not become a victim. I pray that the law enforcement down in Florida will keep